Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here from Dad Saves America. Modern feminism ignores working class men. Let's get into it.
I think that if you at the average male, female in the United States and looked at the deficits and benefits of the sex, what are the advantages to being a man? What are the disadvantages? It turns out that it's just a complicated mix, blessings and burdens. There are ways in which men are privileged and ways in which women are. And it's impossible to say who's better off at this point. And it also depends on the complex set of advantages and burdens, and it varies by social class and so forth. But it's absurd to simply say the women are so much worse off and the men are. I mean, I think it's a central fallacy in feminism. They fail to notice, and let me put it this way. I think too much of the feminist movement focuses on men and women at the very top in professions like how many CEOs of Fortune 500s. And it's true, there are far more men than women, and it would be, I would like to see more men who are, senators and just at the top of their profession. But what happens when you look further down in society at people who are not, in the top 10% in terms of education and elite degrees and so forth? It's a different picture. If you look at working class men and women, it's, both have burdens and challenges. And one of the special burdens that a working class young man has is he's likely to be less educated. And he's entering an information economy where, as I keep saying, education has never been more important and literacy has never been more important. And we have a large cohort of young men coming along who are not going to find a place for themselves in this economy. And so the fact that we have a women's movement that has only looked and primarily focused on some imbalances at the very pinnacle of society and not looked at just the reality of the lives. And to be more specific, if you look at, they'll talk about the wage gap, and that's true. There's a gap and we want to close it, but I think we have to be honest about it. It's not as extreme as they say, and most of it's explained by the different jobs men and women do, or how many hours you work per week, things like that. But also men do most of the dangerous jobs. There's a huge gap in mortality in the workplace. Like, I don't know, something like 5,000 Americans die in the workplace every year. 94% of them are men. So that, that's, then it goes for, that's mortality. Also is true for injuries. And I mean, men do most of the dangerous, gritty jobs, the jobs where you're outside or pitching tar.
You'll never see feminists fighting to be on an oil rig. They'll never roughneck it. You'll never see them putting up power lines, digging ditches. All the hard, dangerous work is like 99.99% men. And there's like always out just one woman, but she's in some like auxiliary position where she's helping, not doing shit. Like, you ever seen a construction site on the road, you're driving, and it used to be the old guys that, their backs have been worn down from working decades in the field. And so as like a consolation prize right before they're going to retire, the last few years, they get to take it easy and hold the sign and just tell you to stop or go. That now is filled by young women. Have you noticed that when you drive by, it's just some useless 20-year-old woman holding the sign? What the fuck is that? Just there for diversity and inclusion. Not because she has any skills. Not because she can actually get off from holding the sign and carry a fucking 80-pound sack of cement or actually do anything with a shovel. That's how crazy this shit is. We've virtue signaled so hard that we've made society not function in any efficient manner whatsoever. Our merit-based society is falling apart, and that is why all our services are now shit, all our food is now shit, the costs are increasing, wait times are increasing, everything is falling apart around us because we don't put the people that should be there in those positions to make a difference, those that are qualified. We're overcorrecting to look on the surface even. Yes, let's put this woman in this position just because she's a woman, and we need more women on this boardroom. What is her qualifications? Nothing. She's just a woman. There's 10 more applications right here of guys with like decades of experience that would absolutely crush it at this position and help the shareholders make 3x over 5 years. This guy is great for the company. Can't hire him. We have mandates. DEI. Someone with the vagina has to be on board. Unbelievable.
Are on top of roofs or construction. These are largely male undertakings, and it has to be factored in when you're doing this calculus of well-being. And but we don't do that. We just don't do it. And and that's, I'm still a feminist. I believe in equality, but that means you care about men and women. And you don't see, as you mentioned before, you don't see it as a competition where you have to be on one team. Because I think that also if men are in trouble or boys are in trouble, so are women. We're in this together. So what we're doing now is so perverse because by not attending to the education of young men, there's going to be a mismatch. People typically marry someone with a similar education. What's going to happen? I mean, women, we know what's happening right now.
They call those men economically unviable. That's the word for you guys, by the way. You are considered by women who get degrees and you don't. You are a economically unviable male. You do not exist in the dating pool. This is the barometer. Hypergamy. You must be on their level or higher. If a woman achieved a bachelor's degree, her man has to have a bachelor's minimum or master's. If she's got a master's, she's going to want a man that's equally or more educated than she is. Whatever job she gets out of college, you must make more than her because you have to be better, because anything less would be her settling. Partially due to women's nature, they always have to trade up men. Partially due to social media pressure that there's women that they're watching get everything in return for nothing. They think they don't have to sweep, clean, wash dishes, fold clothes. They don't have any feminine duties whatsoever, like turning a house into a home, but will demand that they get the traditional uber masculine man that will protect and provide and take a bullet for them. Why would this guy take a bullet for you if you can't even fold the fucking laundry?
People aren't finding each other. There's a lot of loneliness. I just don't think the solution is to focus on one sex and not the other.
I want to come back to the relationship issues, the gaps that are widening. But one of the things that it seems like is happening for girls that is maybe more exaggerated in our times right now is what Jonathan Haidt's been noting about the impacts of social media in particular, and that, you know, the anxiety, the self-harm, the general psychological profile for girls seems to be collapsing farther faster than boys in response to their screen time. How have you looked at this? How do you understand what's happening to boys and girls here?
At first, I thought that Jonathan Haidt, whom I greatly respect, but at first I thought he was exaggerating and it wasn't that bad. But I'm convinced that something is amiss, and it does seem to correlate with the rise of this times girls spend on social media. And I'd be very worried as a parent. I mean, I think people are worried.
I mean, here's the brutal conversation we don't want to have out loud. Society values a woman based on her beauty. Society values a man based on what he can provide. These are two tenets that it's like a unwritten contract. We're not allowed to say it out loud because we try to tell everybody you're equally valuable, you're loved for who you are. Everybody has equality, but that's not true. Because if you're an ugly woman, life will be hard for you. And if you're a poor man, life will be hard for you. If you're a rich man, life's great. And if you're a beautiful woman, life is set. Okay. So what's happening is you're getting a bunch of women that go on social media, underpinning their entire value, especially when they don't have fathers present in their lives, when they're raised in single parent households. They completely value their beauty only as the only marker for self-worth. You go on social media and you compare yourself to absolutely perfect human beings, people that have had hundreds of thousands of dollars of surgery, millions of dollars worth of vacations, going on private islands, helicopters, all the shit, living a life you could only dream of. And you completely compare yourself like piece by piece to this perfect person and them showing you their perfect Instagram real lifestyle. And it turns these women depressed. It makes them go mad, makes them go crazy. They will be in happy relationships and then feel inadequate, feel insecure, feel resentful because why can't you take me on a helicopter trip? Or why does she get all these flowers and you never do this for me? And it's like you're living in a fantasy land. It's a delusion that you think this is what normal looks like. The reason it's so extreme online is because only extreme can get your attention. And women are delving into the extreme more and more, but deluding themselves into thinking that's normal. Why do you think they have such an insane list of icks now that make absolutely no sense? Nothing that matters in terms of his character, his ability to stay in a relationship and be loyal, how he's going to treat her, providing, protecting, his family life, how is he with his mother? You know, any of the stuff that actually matters, they don't care. It's all the superficial extreme stuff that the internet tells them to care about. You know, how flashy his chain is, how nice his car is, shit that doesn't equate to a good partner. But I digress, dude. You say this stuff out loud, that society still bases women on their beauty, whether we live in a femme-centric society or not. You're not going to change this underpinning. This is why feminism even came up about, because not only for the extra tax money, but there is a glass ceiling for women at the tippy top. But the glass ceiling, the old boys club, exists for men too. If you're not connected in the in group, you're not getting in. The problem is we can't push you through the door simply because you have a vagina. We need a merit-based system that rewards people with real skills. If you're a woman and you blow the competition out of the water, you should be the first in line to get hired. Everybody agrees. We want the best man or woman for the job. I don't give a shit. When I had a company, I really didn't give a shit who I hired, man or woman. Can you do the job? Can you do it in extremely fast time? And will it always be correct? Do I have to baby you? Do I have to oversee the project? Do I have to do anything? If you take a load off me from micromanaging you and the job's always well done and the customer is always pleased, then you're my golden star employee. I'm never going to do anything to piss you off. I'm going to offer you more money. I want you to stay longer with the company. Man or woman, man, this stuff doesn't matter. Are we making money or not? Are you fit for the job or not? We have it twisted in the West today. It's all about optics, not performance.
I will say this, it's another reason that we should attend to gender differences, because there's these disparate impacts. So I think it's clear to me that as we pull back on recess, that had a very bad impact on boys. And schools have, by the way, cut back from, a lot of parents think it was the way it was when they were kids, but it's not at all. Some schools don't have it at all.
Wow.
But with girls, I would think social media, there may be a disparate impact. And Jonathan Haidt has shown evidence that there is, and it's a reason to be aware, to attend to the differences and how it may affect kids. But I will say one thing. There's one of the reasons teachers might give that they want boys to write about their feelings and they want schools to be more feeling-centered is that they think this is necessary to combat the dangers of, some unhinged masculinity or something. But there was a very interesting study by, I think it was Amanda Rose at the time. She was at University of Pennsylvania, and she interviewed a huge group of adolescent boys and girls and asked them how they felt after if they had a terrible problem, how did they feel after they talked about it? Did talking it through, make them feel better? And she asked this, 14, 15-year-old kids. And the girls said, absolutely, they felt better. They were so glad they could talk about it with their mom or their best friend. And the boys, with huge disparity. The boys said, first of all, they thought it was weird. And that was the main word that kept coming up, and a waste of time. And it didn't make them feel better. And we have a lot of evidence that this is a difference. So most people rush in and say, well, that's not good for the boys. But actually what they found was that the boys were a little more stoical and could sort of compartmentalize and move on. And the girls were ruminators. When they had a problem, they wanted to talk about it, and they thought about it, and they ruminated. And these psychologists concluded that maybe girls would be better off if we encouraged a little more stoicism. Rather than spending all our efforts to get the boys to be ruminators and constantly talking about how I felt and what it meant, and which most of them don't want to do. And any mother of a boy or father might know about this. But what if it turns out that that's adaptive, and that what the boys are doing is maybe helpful to them? And maybe we've, in this highly therapeutic society where we're so focused on people's emotional states and things, maybe girls have a tendency for that. Maybe we've exaggerated it, and now they have to cope with all of the highs and lows that can be brought on by social media and, what people are saying about you, what's going on, all that. It may be just impossible. So it just may be unfortunate. All of these things have come into play at once, and the sensitivity of girls, which we have encouraged, is helping, adding to the misery.
It strikes me that there's something kind of perverse at play with this focus on therapy and on talking about and ruminating on problems, partly because it seems to me like when you conjure up the feeling of something that was painful, you essentially re-injure yourself to some extent. To some extent, you relive the experience. And it seems like there's a feedback loop there that is not fundamentally healing, but is actually sort of a multi-layered traumatizing that goes on.
Everything is classified as traumatic that used to be just, well, first of all, if you think back to how children grew up in the previous generations, I mean, life was a lot harder. And I don't wish a hard life on my child. And I'm guilty of being a helicopter parent as much as anyone else. It's just, it's impossible not to. But on the other hand, I recognize that my parents were more aloof. They were too busy with life to, and challenges and 3 kids, and they were very young. And they, basically they just didn't pay that much attention to us until, you had to be home at 9 in the summer before dark. I mean, and I don't ever remember them calling up a teacher or anything. I didn't want them to have anything to do with my school. And now parents are so involved, and the child, I'm worried that they're really not learning basic skills of just how to deal with the challenge of life. If you talk to psychologists now, and they've had to increase their numbers at colleges, practically all the kids have a diagnosis, and they're coming for they can't solve the problem. They don't like their roommate or something. They don't seem to have the skills to deal with adversity. And so that's something else and I think Abigail's book was a great reminder to parents that there might be a better way than treating everything as an occasion for examining your inner feelings. Sometimes it's better just to move on. And that goes against the ethos, but it may explain why boys are having a less difficult time with social media. They have another problem with social media. They have a problem with getting addicted with the video games, but even that's exaggerated. A lot of those boys I spent a lot of time with that literature looking at boys and their video games. And for years they tried to show, well, it's making them more violent. That's not been proved. The most violent games of all were, coming out of Japan, and they didn't have high crime rates and things. I mean, they haven't been able to find a correlation. But they said, well, it's wasting their time. But a lot of those boys are learning a lot of skills. They became very interested in the techniques and the tactics, and they became early adapters of all sorts of technology, and they're off, majoring in engineering, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure that that's as harmful as people think. But I do wonder if we haven't made girls more vulnerable by pushing this culture of always being this kind of confessional and feeling centered, and identifying everything as traumatic, and getting all excited about any adversity in her life, rather than teaching young women to be a little tougher.
Infantilization of women. We treat them like children. Nobody ever holds them accountable, including family, because you can't really tell your little princess anything. We raised a group of men in the 60s, 70s that treated women with the whole happy wife, happy life, the bumbling, fumbling, idiot husband that you see on TV in those modern family shows. And what happens is they treat their daughters like little princesses, and then they unleash these so-called toxic viral vectors onto society, where they then expect every relationship that they're in, that it's a take. And they just suck the life out of every man because that's what they expect. Their father never told them no. They were never held accountable. Their self-worth is entirely dependent on gift giving, right? If you don't buy me things to either calm my anger down or to get my love, then you don't actually love me. So you have these monstrosities called the princess complex type of chicks that's running wild all over the West. And it's only getting worse because now it's no longer just the father's not present anymore. You have a weak dad or no dad at all. Now social media is causing the princess complex in women. It's a sad state of affairs because it's only driving the wedge further apart. I mean, you see it too. They're being radicalized now that they're moving so far to the left, like the delta for liberal, lefty policies. Women have basically moved way to the left of the graph, and men have skewed slightly right, more conservative. But women are a huge outlier in that delta, man. It's insane to see. If you're voting this way, then that means you have a specific set of beliefs, a specific set of principles. And we know it's not ideal those lefty principles, liberal women aren't ideal mates, aren't ideal mothers. And it's going to piss people off. But, conservative women make way better wives, way better partners, way better mothers, because your set of principles is underpinned through tradition, gender roles, a man leading the family, perhaps religious, under God, right? You serve God and your man. For the liberal types, it's completely different. It's all hedonism, materialism, consumerism. And they are so hopped up on pharmacologicals just to maintain through their day that, mental instability is the least of your worries as a man when you're dealing with one of those. It's not ideal, dude. Yeah. And when she says modern feminism ignores working class men, it's true, because men at the bottom are invisible to society, but especially women. You're not valued until you could provide value. So feminism has no reason to fight for you, especially this fourth or fifth wave that is so radical. It even attacks other women. Like, sis, you've internalized misogyny just because she wants to be a stay-at-home mother and let her man work, earn money while she raises her kids. That somehow sets her back, sets back women 100 years. It's wild, man, when you hear this shit. Because when you live overseas, when you move overseas just to see other conservative societies that still believe in gender norms and value men, oh my God, it's a completely different experience. You would never want to come back. And someone said feminism was the start of identity politics. Perhaps. Yeah, women with college degrees are often quick to look down on the plumber, carpenter, electrician who repairs the broken things and almost always questions why he should be able to charge a high hourly rate that far exceeds her earning power. Problem-solving skills are not automatically granted by a diploma. I have a STEM master's degree and worked in tech. Believe me, the scales are massively tipped in favor of women at that level too. It's not just working class men. Femmes, their allies, and even neutral parties are blind to this. Even when speaking on behalf of men, the condescension is right there. Here, the inference is that men without a college degree are uneducated and cannot handle this information world. There's an overarching assumption that men without college degrees are somehow inferior. Also, what passes for, quote, education? Here in the USA, it's just anti-male indoctrination. Ooh, I did not hear that addressed at all. I submit that most college degrees in the US are worthless today in terms of the value they provide both the degree holder and society. Femmes worship at the altar of Western secular education. In fact, this discussion here about men was quickly spun into how things impact girls and women. Discussing issues like this with a femme is useless. They cannot talk about men's issues without immediately including women's issues into it. It's all zero sum for them. Any advantage for a man is immediately deemed as stolen from a woman. Man, that's a banger. That's a great one to end it on. He hit the money. Let me know what you guys think on this episode, the topic in general. We used to cover that a lot. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the second channel. Join us for some calls in the private community. We'd love to have you. Get after it. Self-improvement. Find your path in life. Get ahead, because this economy is not doing too well. Things are getting harder and harder. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.